because I have the secret of success. Don't tell anyone else. And the secret, of course, is partnerships. We've heard over the last day and a half about how much content we need to make for all of these multiple platforms. We've heard about how difficult it is to get these programs funded. And actually, it's always been like that. And so Christoph thought that it would be a good idea if we just spent a little bit of time thinking about partnerships, the traditional partnerships between a producer and a broadcaster, which is mainly how it's been for the last 50 years or so, but now the increasing number of partnerships that you need to create programs, and potentially the positives and negatives of that. So I'm going to be speaking as an individual, somebody who's had experience like Julian and like Sheila. We've been in the industry for quite a lot, or a long time now, known as the veterans of the industry, although I look much younger than him, obviously. But I started my career at the BBC in the UK, and I've worked at various other places. When Lego decided that they wanted to be in the media industry, I helped set up Lego Media. I worked at Cartoon Network for a few years. I went to Mattel's preschool production house called Hit Entertainment, which is associated with Fisher-Price. And now I'm at Zodiac Kids. And Zodiac Kids is made up of 3 production houses: the Foundation, which is in the UK, Marathon, and Téléimage, which are based in Paris. I've had a few successes over the years working in animation particularly, although I do live action as well. But all of the shows that I've ever been involved in have been formed with some kind of partnership, whether they're internal partnerships between the marketing department and the financing department, or whether they've been in partnership with third-party partners, broadcasters, producers, etc. I thought it might be worth just clarifying what a partnership is. I know that we're all intelligent people and that we do know what partnership is, but sometimes partnerships can be seen from different perspectives. And some of us think that a partnership is just all about me, and other people think that partnerships are about all of us. So really a partnership is just a relationship. It's either between an individual or it's between a group of people, all who want to get something out of it. In our context, we can look at it from a commissioning point of view, we can look at it from a co-production point of view, or we can even just look at it from a sales point of view, where we're actually selling our programs to broadcasters. And partnerships traditionally take forever to build, to nurture, to develop, and then finally to deliver. So think of it as a marriage as opposed to just a fling. In the end, I think marriage is a good thing. Flings are also good, but marriage is better. So I think, partnerships have a lot of advantages in that you can draw on a wider pool of expertise and talent. You can create programs using that wide expertise, using different perspectives from a commercial point of view or a public service point of view. You can reduce costs because you're sharing the work. And you can, I guess the best thing is produce surprising and innovative ideas, because it's all about discussion and ideas come out of discussion. And of course, out of partnerships, you can create a reputation. You can feed off each other and develop something that's even stronger than if you did it just by yourself. But of course, there are pitfalls. In my experience, partnerships don't always work, and it's not the solution for everything all the time. It's not a quick fix, in other words, because sometimes the effort that you have to put into a partnership is so laborious and so hard, so much hard work that it can outweigh the benefits. There's a challenge in terms of how many people have to make a decision when you're in a partnership, because obviously it's a collaborative experience and so everyone has their voice. There's also pressures from different sides of partnerships, where you might have somebody from a commercial point of view wanting to put toys into your program, and you might be a public service broadcaster and you don't want toys in your program. And then there's this endless commitment of time and energy to keep the partnership going, and even the day-to-day can be laborious because the process can be a lot of effort and hard work. But don't despair, because actually partnerships do work. But it's all about a few things. Good communication, always talking to each other, cooperating, having an open mind, and coordinating amongst each other. Planning ahead, so don't go into a partnership without knowing what the plan is, what the vision is for the goal that you have. Accept that there's a dedication, so effort to making a partnership successful and long-term. And of course, accept that everybody needs something out of it. It's not just a one-way thing. We need to share the benefits. I think the last point is probably really important about sharing. Sharing in your success. I think that whilst it's essential to share this common goal and agree the ambitions that you have to have, it's also important to recognise that each partner gets something out of it, as I've said before. And in some cases, it might be from a broadcast point of view where you want great ratings and wide reach, so a lot of audience. From a toy company, it might be that you want to drive sales to some of your products. And from a producer's point of view, it's really just about paying the electricity bills and making programs. So we need to spend time on relationships, which are called partnerships. And especially now, as we've heard over the last day and a half, that we're working in a global market. Even though we're struggling with the need to hold on to our cultural relevance, our audiences are online, consuming content from anywhere in the world anyway. So has local versus global actually become traditional television versus digital platforms and mobile devices, or versus revenue? I guess we all being pulled in different directions. For local broadcasters, it's investing in relevant content, like Sheila mentioned with RTE, to develop these big audiences to make it feel like it's worthwhile. And for the indie producer like us, the difference between getting a high license fee from a broadcaster to make a local program, or actually to go wider and where you can create brands that have more of an international perspective and scope, which potentially brings in bigger revenues. It's a conundrum, a real conundrum. I think the idea of a partnership simply between a producer and a broadcaster has long been in transition. The old paradigm in which a broadcaster 100% commissioned content for television is slipping away. You're very fortunate in France, it's still the case that you can achieve 100% funding, but you have very tight regulations that allow that to happen, whereas in other countries, sometimes you can barely get 20 or 30% commission from a broadcaster. And so the question is fast changing from who is the commissioning broadcaster to what partners do I need for this content to flourish on multiple platforms in multiple territories. So what do we know? Well, we know that people like Cartoon Network have invested huge amounts of money in their own in-house development. Now they still have to have partnerships because they have to convince the people in Atlanta that they should spend all of that money in Burbank, California. They've been very successful over recent years. And then there's the wider aspect of being a global network. How do you remain relevant with your audiences? And so, for example, Cartoon Network in Europe set up a studio in London to create The Amazing World of Gumball, which comes from a French creator, but it was produced in London for the Cartoon Network. Unfortunately, it's a top 5 show around the world for Cartoon Network, so in that case, it worked. We know that things can come from the internet. Cartoon Network.
Can I have a quick question back there? Was it difficult? You were the head of EMEA at the time for Cartoon Network, and the US loved you doing Gumball, or was it a difficult relationship, or as you said, a partnership on that one?
That's a whole other question that could take half an hour to answer.
I mean, that's my experience working for Disney or Nickelodeon. What you usually do not, what you don't do in the US is like not very interesting.
It's a cultural thing. The US is a huge market. It's a global market in its own self. You know, the Time Warner revenues are like $2 billion for just that market on Cartoon Network. So of course, you know, they're concentrating on their own market, and so when you're outside of that market, you do have a challenge in convincing people to give you money to make other things. But it worked, so good. We're happy. But also, you know, Cartoon Network can move fast. It's really interesting in traditional broadcasting. You know, when I was growing up in television, it would take 2 years to develop and produce something and get it on air, and then it would play once a week for 6 weeks, and then it would disappear. Now, you have to be really fast-paced. You have to react very quickly. And Cartoon Network saw the success of Annoying Orange online, and very quickly, I think within 6 months, they had the TV show on air. Now, it was only really in the US that the phenomenon worked, but it just shows you that, you know, that their traditional broadcasters are thinking differently. And we can see the new platforms with Amazon commissioning Tumbleleaf. There's a new partnership between Netflix, the Seven Network in Australia, and CBBC at the BBC in the UK to create a show called Buttersnipes and Gumballs, where Netflix gets the premiere wherever those two, outside of those two countries, outside of the UK and Australia. And, you know, yesterday we heard about games transforming from, you know, the gaming world into television, Angry Birds being one of them, and we heard from Ubisoft about the Crazy Rabbits. So there are all sorts of different partnerships forming, but that we know about. What we don't know about is the emerging markets like China, India, and Latin America. We can see in China that they are starting to produce shows with international producers. So Little Airplane from the US is in partnership in China on a preschool series called Peking Duck. They also partnered up with Funny Flux to create Super Wings. And Foxfield Entertainment, which is Bruce Johnson's company, he developed something specifically with CCTV called Mr. Dragon's Park. So China is looking out as much as it's looking in, but where that goes is a big question. India is the same. India has been a service platform for the animation industry for many, many years. They have the capacity, but we haven't seen the revolution yet in them coming into the rest of the global market, so that's a question. And in Latin America, we also know that the creativity has just exploded over the last 5-10 years, where some really innovative work is happening, but it's still struggling to become a global player, but it's only just around the corner. And of course then there's all of the other stuff that we've all been talking about over the last few days, which is the emerging. I think, you know, that 2015, this moment in time, is really proving to be the turning point of the digital decade. Mobile and tablet usage, as we've just heard, seems to be gaining ground over TV and mobile devices. And in many markets, YouTube and Amazon and Netflix are the place to go. So with our audience's insatiable desire to find and control content that they love, combined with the few barriers that the digital world puts up, new brands and channels will emerge and thrive, much in the same way that, you know, we called the new channels Cartoon Network, Disney and Nickelodeon when cable and satellite first launched in the US and then came to Europe. Now you'll see other things like Hopster and Videoverse and even Marco Polo Learning. So it's a scary world, but guess what? great stories and characters never die. They always come back to life somehow on a platform near you. We're about to be swamped. The entire world is going to be taken over by many brands. This is just a selection of the new stuff that is in production, from already launched Mutant Ninja Turtles to Thunderbirds to Danger Mouse. Even Bob the Builder is coming back in a new slimmed down form. So a really interesting time where the new and the old are mixing. So what is the future? Well, this is the big $64 million question. I guess between the known, the unknown, the emerging, and those heritage things, it would seem that the essential point is about partnership. It's between different people from different industries as part of a mix, using technology to enable children to find the content that they want, but continuing to create good content. In the future, children will still demand high standards in what they watch, and if anything, they'll probably want more. But to feed their appetite, the industry will have to keep adapting, testing new ways of monetization, content development and distribution. And by carrying forward a spirit of cooperation and shaping the future through various partnerships that are built on mutual respect, trust, inclusiveness, and cooperation, I believe that the future remains very bright.